All right, so thank you all for coming to iMovie Basics. It's part of the um, programming for Fast Film Fest 2022. Fast Film Fest is a stop motion festival that's hosted by the Robert C. Williams Museum of Papermaking, Georgia Tech Library, and ASIFA South. So just want to tell you guys a little bit about Fast Film Fest. This is our fourth year doing Fast Film Fest, and it's original animated films, 5 seconds to 5 minutes long, that are made from paper or whose focus is paper. It's free to participate and shared with the world via a virtual screening and then online at the Paper Animation Film Fest YouTube channel. But you can see some examples of films that were submitted last year on the Paper Animation YouTube channel, also on the Paper Museum's website, paper.gatech.edu. And this year's theme is Press Start is this year's theme. So I'll get into our introduction for our speaker tonight, Alison Valk. Alison Valk is the Instructional Coordinator and Multimedia Librarian for the Georgia Tech Library, a position held since 2010. She studied art at the University of Georgia and holds a BBA in Computer Information Systems from Georgia State University and a Master's in Library and Information Studies from Florida State University. She teaches approximately 100 workshops a year on professional multimedia software, including tools for video, audio editing, and graphic design. In 2016, she became the program manager for the Georgia Tech Library's instruction program and service owner of the library's Media Scholarship Commons. As instructional coordinator, she oversees the development of the library's educational curriculum. She leads numerous specialized educational programs, including a federal IMLS, Institute for Museum and Library Services, grant-funded program that integrates arts-based projects and library resources into the curriculum. She also teaches computational media research section focused on virtual reality for teaching and learning. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it on to Alison.
Okay, thank you, Jerusha. I was like, whoa, that's that bio kind of went on for a minute. Well, welcome everybody. I'm Alison Valk, and I've been working with Jerusha on this project for I guess several years, running workshops and helping out with the festival. And so this programming is sort of a part of it. So this is a workshop tailored for beginners. And tailored for sort of stop motion animation. So I'm gonna just cover a quick overview of how iMovie works, and then I'm also going to talk about a few kind of hacks that you can do to utilize iMovie to create stop motion video. But I'll probably start by just giving an overview and talking about iMovie for those who have not utilized iMovie before. If you, I did send this out in advance, but in case you weren't registered on the form that I happened to send out, in the chat there is a link to exercise files, which are some of the media files I'll be using today. And you can download them all, and it'll maintain the folder structure. If you use the, I think there's a link in the upper button or something, a download button in the upper left-hand corner of that link that allows you to sort of download it all. It might, I mean, depending on your connection, it might take a while if it, so you can also just download a few at a time as well, if that's easier. But it is there if you need it, if you want to work with it after the class or, whenever you need it. I'm going to go ahead and maximize that screen. Okay, so we are looking at the iMovie interface with a project in progress. But I'm actually going to jump back here to where it starts. Usually, iMovie is a basic video editing platform that is Mac-only software. It usually comes with a Mac, and it doesn't have a lot of the advanced features that you might find in, say, Adobe Premiere or some of the other ones, but you can still get a halfway decent movie done, and you could definitely do something for the Fast Film Festival utilizing iMovie. And a lot of times, for a short film, you don't want to get too bogged down, so using a simple platform is just fine. So when you first open up iMovie, you're looking for, there's like a star icon in the bottom of the screen. Basically, it looks like a star with a camera in the middle. If you hover over it, it'll say iMovie. When you open it up, you're going to get to a screen that looks like this. Now, if you're opening it for the first time, it may, you may not have anything in there. It's actually saving every film I've ever made or every little project I've worked on. It automatically saves it as you go along. So, if you have past projects, they'll show up. But if you don't have any past projects, it might be blank. But you will have this giant sort of create new button here. And you can always go to the file menu and start a new project, or you can just go to the giant create new and start a new project there. Now, you'll have the option of a movie or a trailer, and a trailer is more of a template. You probably wouldn't want this for this sort of project. With the Fast Film Festival, you're sort of creating your own original content, so you're going to want movie. And so we are going to go ahead and hit movie. And it started a new project for us. However, all this media that's in here, this is stuff that's in my media library. So it does save whatever you have in your media library for use on a new project. But you can see that the timeline down here in the bottom, this part, is empty. And that's because it's anticipating a new project. So let's first just walk through what we're looking at for those who have not used it before. Up here in the upper left-hand corner, I mentioned this is the media library. So this is basically where you are going to import all your assets. And when I say assets, I mean any audio, video, still images, anything that you're going to use in your project. And it's okay. It's always better to import more media than you really need, because you're going to edit and cut it up down here in the bottom in the timeline. So think of this as just all the available media that you might potentially use. And the way that you bring media into the media library is you basically go to the import media option. And you can import any type of media. You can import audio, you can import video, you can import still images, which might be of interest for a stop motion project. So you'll basically utilize this command to bring in any new media. Let's see. And looking at the media here, these are the little icons. These are all the clips and media that I have, and I can sort of scroll through my options here. You can see these are actually a lot of still images that I have. And we know they're still images because they have a little camera icon there in the upper right-hand corner, or I'm sorry, upper left-hand corner of the icon. If it doesn't have that little camera icon, then it's actually a video. And so right there is actually a 16-second video that I have. And then these are other things that we're going to play around with later in the session. But this is also a 14-second video that I imported. And then this is a still image. But you can also bring in audio. So just for the heck of it, I'm going to bring in some audio. Hopefully I can find it. Basically, you can see if it's not a file type that iMovie will import, it'll be grayed out. So you can see these Word documents that I have; those are grayed out. Whereas let's see, I've got the Jaws music, so I'm just going to import that. And that's what an audio file looks like in there. So that's a 2, and it'll give you the length of time. That's a 2.8 minute audio file that I just imported. And I know that these dates are sort of old on here. I wouldn't pay much attention to that. There's some settings that are off on my computer that are not showing current dates, so just kind of ignore that. Probably if you were using it, the dates would be more accurate. All right. And then actually, I think it's probably the date the file was created, because I want to say I created these back in February 2021. So it may be a creation date. All right, so we've imported our footage into our library, and this is sort of essentially the assets we're going to use for our project. So if we're utilizing this media, basically the workflow is pretty simple. You can drag these items down into your timeline. So if I'm going to create a stop motion video out of all these still images that I have imported, and I've got them in sequence here, so that's key to have them all in sequence where they started. This was just a sort of a little paper animation I made with Jerusha last year. I'm going to highlight. You can highlight multiple assets, so I'm actually going to highlight all these still images. I think there's around 200 of them. And you can see I held the Shift key and I highlighted them all at one time. Oh, I don't need that one, so yeah. Actually going to start over. Sorry, my mouse is sticking a little bit, which is... All right, so I'm selecting all the still images. And I'm just going to drag them down into the timeline. And so you can see it's bringing all those still images down into our timeline. Our timeline down here, this is basically where our final product is going to be. I'm sort of scrolling through the timeline to get to the end, because I think I actually brought in one asset that I didn't need. So I'm going to delete that. So if there is anything that you need to delete from your timeline, you can just right-click on it and you can copy it, you can delete it, you can do other stuff. So this very last one, I actually accidentally brought that in, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. But what this is this is a series of around 200 still images that I have brought into the timeline. Up here, in this upper right-hand corner of iMovie, this is your preview screen. So basically you can preview any clip. So if I were to say, highlight this clip or sort of scrub through this clip, it's giving me a preview of that clip. Now, it's kind of zoomed in right now. So what we probably want to do, and the reason it's doing that is because by default, when you bring in a still image into iMovie, it applies an effect on it, which is known as the Ken Burns effect. And that is basically a zoom effect where you start at one place within the photograph and move to another. So you can see how it says start end here. That's sort of where you start within the frame and where you move. So we want to kind of take that panning or zooming effect off of this, and I'm going to click here where it says fit. And so that's going to give me a more accurate preview of that particular frame. And so that's kind of what that still image would look like. Now, this is a preview screen I mentioned. Up here on sort of the upper right of this, or at the top of this screen right up here, these are all little icons that provide a level of editing. So as you saw, when I wanted to change the view on that particular frame there, I clicked on the crop tool and I was there's these different settings for cropping. So there's fit, crop to fill, Ken Burns. So you can change sort of different effects on there. And there's other ones here. There's like, white balance. If we were wanting to, do any sort of color correction, we've got a few different editing tools here. And I'll show you some of these other ones. Because this is a still image, not all of the options up here are showing up. If it was a video, all these options would be available to us because, for instance, we would want to change the speed of the clip, or maybe we want to play around with the audio and noise reduction. But because this is going to be a stop motion, and our starting point is still images, these options are not available to us. But they're going to be once we turn this into a video. All right, so I've got all these still images, and you notice that right now only the first clip is sized correctly. All these other ones, it kind of has that weird Ken Burns effect again, and so we want to change that for all of them. We want to apply the same effect to all of them. We want to remove that Ken Burns effect. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift. Go all the way to the end, highlight this, and then I'm going to actually highlight them all at one time by utilizing my Shift key, because I want to apply the same effect to all of them. Okay, so now you can see that all the clips are highlighted, and I'm going to remove that Ken Burns effect on all of them so that I have a full frame there. Okay, so we've got our clips ready to go. Before I move on, though, the way I sort of structure these online workshops, since it's a little different than the in-person ones, is I do like to take pauses throughout just to make sure, I know Jerusha's in there, she can moderate the chat, and also just give people an opportunity to ask questions if if they have any, and just make sure everybody can hear and see me all right. So in a nutshell, to summarize what I just covered, you import all your assets here by going to File and Import. You drag the assets that you want to use for your project down into the timeline. All you have to do is either press the plus sign on them or simply just drag them down into the timeline. As you work with individual or multiple clips within the timeline, you can edit aspects about it by utilizing some of these editing tools up here in the upper right-hand corner, and you can preview in the preview screen up here. So in a nutshell, that's kind of how the interface is laid out. Now, I was just talking about media here. Before I sort of pause, I just want to mention there are other aspects of other components that you can pull down into the timeline that are already there. iMovie provides you with titles and text that you can pull down into the timeline as well to add into your movie. There's also transitions, which we'll talk about in a second. That's essentially like, transitions are basically something that allow you to glue clips together so that they look seamless, as opposed to having like an abrupt, stop between clips. So you can toggle between these here by clicking on these tabs up at the top. But for the most part, you're probably going to spend most of your time in the My Media one, but there are some other ones up here as well. So I'm just going to pause here. This is just an interface overview, just to see if that makes sense to people. Any questions so far? So thinking ahead, these clips that we're looking at here, these, just to show you how easy green screen technique can be. Obviously, this is a little paper animation that I made with Jerusha, similar to something that you might make for the Fast Film Festival. Very simple to create. You can probably be as simple or as complex as you want to be. But just to show you that you don't really need a lot of fancy tools to create a green screen in iMovie, I utilized just a piece of green construction paper behind it. And the reason that I'm doing that for each of these still images is eventually what we're going to do is we are going to put a custom background in there. So if you're at all familiar with film and, the movies, how they always, they do the special effects by doing the green screen, and the actor and actresses will do a lot of their lines in front of a green screen, and then the special effects people will come in and put something in the background. Well, that's essentially what we're going to do with iMovie. And it might not be as super fancy as something like what Spielberg would do, but along the same lines. So we are going to, one, create the illusion of movement by stringing all these still images together, and then two, we're going to put a custom background in by removing everything that's green, namely the green construction background, and put in a custom background. And it's really not that hard. iMovie makes it easy with a lot of automated tools that I'm going to familiarize you with. But first, we need to turn all these still images that we've taken into a movie. So, by default, when we pulled all these still images down into the timeline, you can kind of notice as I hover over them here that each of them are 4 seconds long. That is the default amount for iMovie. So by default, each of these still images is going to stay on your screen for 4 seconds. And that's not going to work. We want something much, much shorter. So what we're going to do first is we are going to shorten this. And so what I'm going to do is I am just going to highlight all my clips again. I'm utilizing the Shift key to highlight them all at one time. We know they're highlighted because there's an sort of an orange or yellow block around them. And remember up here at the top, I was telling you that on the upper right-hand corner, you have editing tools. And we already have applied one of those edits. We've gone into the crop tool and we've taken out the Ken Burns effect and just made it a single fit. But now what we're going to do is we're going to click on this button here that says Clip Information, where it says I. I'm going to click on that. And so here you can see it says duration 4 seconds. So that's the same thing as what we saw down in the timeline. Each of those still images is on the screen for 4 seconds. And that's reflected at, right now our video is 8 minutes long. So we want to, that's not going to work to give us the nice seamless effect that we want. So we're going to reduce the duration of each of these clips on the screen. So I'm going to drop this from 4 seconds to 0.1. So you can control what the duration is on the screen by changing that value there. So you can see I have 120 still images. Each of them is going to be 0.1 of a second. And so hopefully that should work. Great. So you want to hit enter to get that to apply. And you can kind of see now in the middle here, this always tells you the duration of what's on the screen. We dropped from 8 minutes to 16 seconds. So this is going to be a lot smoother. So if I were to play this now, and if we want to play or preview what we've got, we can always hit like the play button here, but we can also come to the beginning of the timeline and hit the space bar. For those of you new to audio or video editing, if you hit the space bar, that's a shortcut for stop and start. So this is looking a lot smoother now. There's no delay, so our person is sort of slowly moving around on the green screen. So we're getting a preview there. All right. And I did a little mix there. I have a pine cone in there, but I also have, the paper. So think about that as you're being, hopefully you'll attend some of the other workshops we have where they'll teach you techniques on how to integrate different components into your paper animation. Maybe you want to have a combination of 3D images and 2D paper. So you can do all kinds of different things. All right. So we are set. We've got our 16 seconds. It's moving pretty smoothly. It's in front of a green screen. Now what we want to do is we want to convert this into a movie so that we can actually edit it and work with it in iMovie and remove that green screen. So the next step is we're actually going to finalize this and then bring it back into iMovie. So incidentally, the way that you finalize a video or asset or anything you're working on in iMovie is you go to File, Share, and then in this case, we're going to go to File, File, Share, File. And it's going to take, and you don't have to worry about all those assets that you have in your library. Those are just things you might use. It's really, when you finalize something, it's going to focus on what's in the timeline at the bottom. So that's what it's actually going to work with. So I'm going to go File, Share File. And, you'll have some settings here. Do you want it to be high quality? What's the resolution? It'll tell you that it's a 16-second movie. And then we're going to hit Next. Just give it a name. And there it goes. So, it's rendering right now. It's not going to do it instantaneously. And if you ever want to know the progress of a movie, up here in the upper right-hand corner, there is a little sort of timer or cooker there that is showing you where it is in the rendering process. Now, this is a very short video, so it's not going to take very long. But the rendering process can take quite some time. If you have sort of a longer video, you might be rendering it for some time. For you Georgia Tech affiliated people, we do have a video editing suite, where we have a brand new Mac Pro in there, which renders very fast. So if you are, interested in exploring that, I'll share a little bit more information about that towards the end. But yeah, keep rendering time in mind. Depending on the size of your assets and what you're working with, that can take some time. But as you can see, our little timer went away, so ours is completed. It sent me a little message. It says, that it is completed. And so now what we want to do is we want to import that video we just created into our media library. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go File, Import Media. So this is that same step that we did in the beginning to bring in our media. So there's our test video. It saved it as an MP4. So I'm going to import the selected. And so it has probably is bringing it in or has brought it into my video library. And again, I just did that by going, oh, there it is. So there's my 16-second video that I created. So now rather than having a bunch of still images, I have got a 16-second video that is all those images together. And that's what we're going to work with. So having done that, I'm going to go ahead and take out these still images that we were working with because we don't need to use them anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of them, and I'm just going to right-click and go delete, and it'll take them all out. So we're back to where we started again with a clean slate. But any questions on that? Did that kind of make sense? How you basically how you create a video? That's the workflow in a very small nutshell. We're going to move on to green screen next.
Hi, this is Surabhi, and I have a question. I wasn't sure if you already talked about it in Zoom, but how did you generate all these images? Did you take pictures of each individually, or is there a process behind it?
Yeah, that's a great question. In this case, yes. Those are still images that I took with a camera. And, unfortunately, that's one of the reasons that I think stop motion is very laborious, is the hard part is kind of sitting there and moving each of your animations and taking a picture. But, yes, I in terms of what I did, the legwork beforehand, yeah, I basically it was around, I guess it's 123 pictures. I took 123 pictures, and I believe I did that with, I had a green piece of construction paper, and I had a tripod for my phone camera, and I had a little remote. And, you definitely don't want to touch the camera while you're taking these pictures. Having some kind of a little Bluetooth remote or something like that can be really beneficial. And you just, you slowly move your animation through whatever cycle it is, and hit your Bluetooth remote. So that's one way that you can do that. Did you have any thoughts on that too, Jerusha? Because I know you've done a few workshops on that as well.
If you don't have a clicker, you can put the timer on for the camera. You can take a video where you're just kind of recording the full process, but then you have to go back and edit out your hands from the video. So there is
Yeah.
that option too.
Great. And so a lot of times, if you're doing something kind of longer, it is it's good to do these maybe in chunks. It can make it more digestible. You just need to keep your setup, or do them in scenes. It's a little bit easier to manage.
Can I say
Oh yeah.
one more
Oh yeah,
thing?
yeah. Go for it. Yeah.
We do have a tutorial of the actual process of setting up to take pictures for stop motion on our webpage and our YouTube channel, and I put the links to that in the chat.
Right. So once you've kind of gone through that process, and honestly, that's sort of the heavy lifting there, is getting all your assets ready for the work. So I've got my video that I've created, and I'm just going to pull that 16-second video now down into the timeline. And this is basically what I'm going to be working with. So I'm hitting the space bar to stop and start. And you can kind of see my little creature there is moving along. All right, this should work. So now we want to think about what type of a background that we want to use on this, because basically we're going to remove that green background. So you may have noticed in my media assets, I had another still image that is sort of this forest scene. So right now I'm kind of hovering over it here, and you can see a preview of it over in the right, on the right-hand side. So we've got a nice forest scene. So I think I'm going to use this forest scene as the background for the paper animation. And what we want to do, I'm actually going to delete my video. It's okay if I delete it because I can bring it back in. I'm going to bring my background in first. So the next step is to bring in your background. So I'm going to drag my background, which is also a still image, FYI. And so it's not really going to be doing much. It is doing that zoom effect. Again, just a reminder that anytime you bring a still image in, by default, if you press where the cropping button is up here, the Ken Burns effect is going to be in place. So if you don't want that zoom effect on there, you're going to want to click off of that by going to Fit. So I'm going to go ahead and go Fit because I don't want the zoom to be happening in my scene. Now, we want to keep in mind for our background that this is only 4 seconds. Again, it brought in like it on the default, which is 4 seconds. And my video that I created is 16 seconds long. So that's not going to work. We want the two to match. If I'm going to use those two together for green screen, we want them to be around the same amount of time. So similar to last time, if we want to change the duration of a clip, whether it's shorter or longer, with that clip highlighted in the timeline, I'm going to come up here to where I have my clip information, which is a little eye. And you can see magical forest scene, 4 seconds long. But I want it to be much longer to match up with the video that I just created. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say 17 seconds to increase it, the duration, and hit enter. And so that should be about right. I've got about 16 seconds of this video. So now this is going to stay on screen for 15 seconds. It is running off the screen, and when you're doing your work, it can be hard sometimes to, to see what you're doing when something's running off the screen already at 16 seconds. So just a heads up, as we're looking at the interface, this little slider here next to where it says settings, this allows you, if I move it to the left here, see how it's still 16 seconds, but it's just making it so more stuff can show up on the screen. And when you're in the early stages of creating your video, being able to see everything at a glance is so much easier, because in a lot of senses you're just doing storyboarding, so you're moving things around, and it's easier to be able to see the big picture. So moving that slider to the right or the left will control the view of your clips on the screen. Okay, so that's the step one. We've brought our background into the timeline. We've adjusted the length of it by clicking on the eye icon up here at the top to 17 seconds. And I've adjusted my view right here with the slider so that I can see more of the screen when I'm working with it. So now I want to bring that video that I just created down onto the timeline. And I'm going to put it on top of my background. So you can see it's on top of my background. And it's okay. It's previewing what we've got here. And it's okay that the background's not showing up right now, because we're going to fix that. Just do know that with iMovie, you can layer clips. And that's what we've done here. We've basically dragged down one clip on top of another. You don't have to have like them all linear, one after another. You can actually layer clips. For iMovie, you can only layer 2 clips at a time, but there's workarounds if you want to, create something a little bit more complex. But anyway, I've got one clip on top of another. Now, anytime you put one clip on top of another in your timeline like this, up here, a new option has showed up in our screen. And this is known as the video overlay settings. You can kind of see when I hover over it here how it showed you, it said it's video overlay settings. That option only shows up if you have one clip on top of another, because those are overlay settings. And that's what it's meaning, is that you're layering clips together, and you may want to adjust that. So a couple of things that you can do for overlays. The first thing I'm just going to show you while we're here. Opacity, you can, layer clips and you can change the opacity on it. So here you can see, I can sort of see through to the background by just changing the opacity. And that, you wouldn't be using that with green screen, but you could potentially use that for another effect. If you wanted to create kind of a blended look, you can use the opacity slider. But what we want to pay attention to right here is where it says cutaway. We actually want to change this to green and blue screen. You have some other options here, and I'll show you those in a minute, split screen, picture in picture, but I want to go to green and blue screen. When I select that, it automatically wipes out anything that is green. So it's basically looking at that green background that I put in place, and it kind of erased it. But it left my little character here. So you can kind of see how this is working now. It's kind of blended it with that background, that forest background. So we'll see our animation there, but also integrated into the forest scene. And I think our background kind of runs a little long, so I'm going to stop it here. And just so you know, you can trim clips by pulling them. These sliders here will move to the left or the right. So you see how that's moving to the left or the right. So I'm actually going to pull this back a little bit so that it doesn't go a little bit longer than my scene. So there we go. So we can preview it. I'm just pressing the space bar to preview it. And there's our scene. And that's how easy green screen is in iMovie. You really just need something with a green backdrop, and you can utilize the green screen feature here to kind of remove that. The softness slider here, sometimes you'll get a little bit of a ghost going around your object. So if you want to clean that up, you can actually soften the edges by moving that slider to the right or the left if you need to. But it's a nice little automated tool in iMovie that allows you to create a green screen effect and put in a custom background. And if we wanted it, say, to fade out, I was mentioning earlier that there are other components that you can incorporate into your film. So if I wanted, say, this to fade to black here, I could drag this transition down here, maybe the bottom. Let's maybe do a cross dissolve at the beginning. I don't know how this is going to look, but we'll see. So see how it faded in there? That's because I added those transitions in. And hopefully if this is doing what I want it to do, it's going to fade to black at the end. Sort of faded out. I'm not sure I like that, but you get the idea. Kind of more for demo purposes. These little icons here with the sort of the little triangles here, these are the transition points. So if you pull a transition down into your timeline, that's what they look like. So I'm going to pause here again and just see if there were any questions on green screen or how that might work.
I have another question. This is Serbia. So it's a good idea to not have green in our foreground image, right?
Yes. In fact, that's one of when we have a green screen at the library, and they always say when you're coming in to work with the green screen, don't wear a green shirt or else you'll be a floating head. So yes. If you are using iMovie, probably I would, at the very least, I would keep it like very limited green or not a green that looks like your background. If you were really needing green in a video and wanted to incorporate it with green screen, what you end up having to do is you have to move to a more advanced platform where you can be a little bit more refined about which greens it takes out and which greens it leaves in. For iMovie, unfortunately, with it being such a sort of it does have a lot of automated tools. It doesn't sort of allow you that level of control. So what I would suggest is, maybe if you were using a green, something that's a very off green, that probably would not get pulled out.
Right. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Awesome. So, yeah.
Sorry.
No, go for it, Jerusha.
So, and you might be getting to this. What happens if you accidentally, like you put your image together and you don't realize, oh, this is too close to my green screen color? Is there a way to save like to recapture elements of your image, of your picture? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So you're saying like, oh, if like maybe little sections of it get blipped out or something like that?
Yes.
Let me see, let me try something. I think that might be what we could do with some of these cleanup tools. Let me see. I just want to see if this works. I was kind of hoping the softness would maybe not remove as much. Yeah, I don't know if there's an easy way to do that. There's probably some workarounds. I'm thinking probably there could be some workarounds with color correction or something like that.
Gotcha.
But yeah, in iMovie there might not be an easy way. But that's a good question. I'll investigate that and see if there's sort of an after way to fix that. I think it's just kind of good practice to stay away from anything that's a solid green for your character, or, main element within the video, if you're using, green screen. Also, just another thought, folks. I know we're talking about green screen and that's kind of the more common one. Notice it says green or blue screen. If you need green, you can always do blue. So those are sort of interchangeable. You could do it with a different background color. So, that's just something to keep in mind. Right. Any other questions about green screen? Well, as you can see, this is, it's not too bad. Really, like I was mentioning earlier, the laborious part of it is actually taking all the still images, if that's the way you're going. Now, there are apps that, can help you with that, which, I think some of our tutorials on the Fast Film Festival site include this, but there's stuff like iStop Motion. There's software like DragonFrame. There are some softwares that are they're designed for that, and you can do that. This is just something where you can create a similar effect in iMovie, just with still images. All right, so now what we want to maybe do is bring in some audio for this. So let's see. Jump over here. Hopefully I have I think I should. Let me see. I'm going to try to bring it in. I have sort of some dreamy music that I downloaded from a resource called the Free Music Archive. And so I'm going to try to bring that in. But when you import your audio, it's like I was mentioning earlier, it's going to look like this. It's going to essentially look like what's known as a waveform, which is the visual representation of audio. This 15-second clip here, I know I'm sorry that you can't hear it. It's basically kind of like this fairyland dream-like audio. It should be included in your exercise files if you're interested in utilizing it or hearing it. But you can drag that down just like you would a video file. So when I associate this audio file with this video, when I play this, not sure if you can hear it, but it's playing the music along with the video. So it looks like it's all integrated. And so you can add your own custom narration, your own custom audio. Audio can be brought in just as you would, the video files. Now, you can grab audio from a source like the Free Music Archive, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. Or if you want to create your own narration, maybe get creative, maybe use some voice distortion tools. There is a little icon right here with a microphone. And whenever you have a microphone attached to the computer you're working with, and you press this microphone button, you can record a voiceover. And so something that is handy about it is if you are sort of watching a video, like maybe you've created a video, you can create your voiceover while you're watching the video so that it's timed up with the video that you're associating it with. So basically how this works is if you press this, it'll kind of give you let's see, I'll try this. It'll give you like a display here where there's a red button, and as soon as you hit that red button, it'll give you a countdown, and then it'll start recording whatever comes through the microphone, and it'll automatically create a voiceover file in the timeline, just like we have this audio file here. So that's kind of how the voiceover tool works. So that might be something else that you can consider for creating audio. If you need to adjust audio, it is, iMovie is not really designed to be an audio editor. It does have some basic functionality, but it's not heavy duty in the audio. I would suggest if you need to do heavy duty audio editing that you edit it in another platform outside of iMovie like GarageBand or Audacity, and then bring it into iMovie. But there are a few things that you can do in iMovie, and I'm going to show you just visually here. One is, I don't know if you guys can see this, but there's a line that goes up or down. And what this is doing is this is changing the overall volume of the audio clip. So if it starts getting into that yellow or red, too much, that means that it's clipping, it's too loud, so it'll probably not sound good. But you can increase or decrease the volume of a clip. These little circles here at the end of each clip that sort of show up when you hover over the end, this is known as fade in and fade out. So if you hover over the little circle and then pull to the left or pull to the right, you can create a fade in or fade out with your video, with your audio, so that it's not like abrupt. So you don't have like an abrupt ending or an abrupt beginning. And you can have that fade, go for as long as you need it to go within your clip. And all you have to do is just, again, is hover over the end until you see the circle and then pull to the left or to the right, depending if you're doing a fade in or a fade out. So those are two things you can do: overall volume, and you can do a fade in or a fade out with your audio. One other thing that you can do, which is not super well known with the audio, but might be useful to you, say that you have an audio clip and you want to just sort of isolate a certain section of it and reduce just a portion of the video a portion of the audio rather than the whole thing. If you hover over the audio line and you hold your Alt or Option key, depending on if you're on a Mac the Alt Option key. If you press the Alt or Option key and you kind of hover over that line and then click, you create what's known as a keyframe. And a keyframe, what I'm doing here, I'm holding the Alt Option key and I'm clicking on this line. What a keyframe is just these are control points. So you can see that they work as sort of, they'll allow me to isolate sections of the audio rather than moving the whole thing up and down. I can move just sections of it up and down. If you really want to get into keyframing, you definitely have to maybe step into another type of platform to work with keyframes on a regular basis. But it's nice to know that iMovie does have the capability to do a little bit with keyframes, so that you don't have, you're not stuck with moving the whole thing up or down. And if you don't like where the keyframe is, you can hover over it and right-click and delete that keyframe. So I'm going to delete the keyframe. But yeah, usually you'll want to create about, 4 of them in order to create sort of handles that you can then move up and down. So I'll take another pause here and just to tackle audio, see if anybody had any questions about audio. I will talk a little bit about Audacity and some of those other platforms, like how you can bring audio in there. Just a second, but just wanted to see if there was any questions about how you modify audio in iMovie.
Put the links for GarageBand and Audacity in the chat.
Oh, cool. Okay, thank you. And incidentally, up here, for if you have audio like attached to a video clip, there is like a volume control up here at the top that allows you to kind of play around with audio a little bit. They even have like audio effects, like if you wanted to say make something sound robotic or give it a cosmic or make it sound like a shortwave radio, they have some special effects in there. These are canned effects, so that you don't really have a lot of control over customizing them, but you can get to them by clicking here under the clip filter and audio effects button up here at the top. So that's when you have some audio attached to a video, you can apply some of those effects there. Okay.
So if you have sound connected with a video, but you don't want to use that sound, let's say it caught someone coughing or sneezing or whatever, you can, when you use the tools at the top there, that'll just adjust it for the video that's previewed, correct? It's not going to affect the sound file, the other sound file that you drag in.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm glad you mentioned that because I should probably clarify a little bit about something. Your question has sort of reminded me. I'm going to actually pull another clip down here. Oh, this is not a good one to show. Let me see. Neat. I want to show an example. Let me see. Maybe this one might be a little bit louder. Okay, that's better. I want to show you the difference between two types of clips. So in the instance where we were working with stop motion here, I brought in my own, because those were still images, they had no audio associated with them to begin with. So I didn't have to worry about audio being attached to those video clips. So I brought in my own audio, which is the dream sequence one down here, and I've associated it with this video clip. But if you are working, like say you shoot some video, like straight up video with your video camera, your iPhone or whatever, and you want to use that video footage, it may look like this. This is a video file with audio associated with it. So this is basically just something that was shot with a video camera and was imported, and I brought it back down into the timeline, and you can see you've got the video and you've got the audio that is attached to it. So it's currently attached to it, and you can tell the difference because it's blue, and down here it's green. This is audio that is attached to the video. Now, in the instance that Jerusha was mentioning, to answer her question, if you have some audio that you just want to get rid of, there's a couple of ways to fix it. Maybe we just don't want this audio at all. Like we think it's bad audio. We just want to do a narration to explain to people what's happening. This guy is tying his shoes. We don't really need all the ruckus and noise that was originally associated with the video. You can right-click on that video clip, and these are the options that you have for working with a video clip. And one of those options is detach audio. So if I go ahead here and I say detach audio, it has separated the audio and video into two separate clips. In doing this, what this allows us to do is I can now delete the audio but keep the video. So I've got the video, but now this has no audio associated with it. That frees me up to put my own audio or my own narration with it. So that's one way to get rid of video or work with audio that's associated with the video. The other way is sort of what I was describing with that clip, is you can do all the same things with the audio here as you can with this audio. So like you can move the slider up and down to control the overall volume. You can move this little circle to the left or to the right to control a fade in or a fade out. Or if somebody coughed right here and you wanted to kind of, try to get it out, first you might want to try to zoom in on it first to get your best, view of it. And then you could, maybe focus in on whatever that area is. And maybe you want to just totally mute that whole area right there within the audio. So that's kind of another way of working with audio is you can detach that audio. So thank you for reminding me about that, Jerusha. Did that kind of answer your question?
Definitely.
Yeah, and just something to keep in mind whenever you pull a clip down into the timeline, which is where we are right now, you can right-click on these clips to find different functionality. So, like for instance, you can copy it and make another, a duplicate of it. You can delete it. You can play it. If I wanted to split it at a particular point, like maybe I wanted to make this into 2 clips, I could right-click and go split clip, and that actually changes it into 2 clips. So, you've got different functionalities by just clicking on a clip and then right-clicking. The main ones, obviously is like the cut, copy, delete, and split, and then I also use detach audio a fair bit as well. But hopefully that sort of shows you a little bit more of what you can do with iMovie. Something else too, just about audio real quick, since audio is so critical for making something sound good. If you have a video that you've taken and maybe you love the audio, but you hate the video, you don't have to keep both. You can always, at any point, if you have something down on the timeline, like say I was working with this piece, like this particular piece of video right here, and this other stuff wasn't in here, maybe I loved the audio in it, but I really don't need the video. You can always go up here and go File, Share File, like what I was talking about earlier for exporting. File, Share File. And if you go to the File menu, notice it says Format. Oh, that looks weird. It looks like he has like a pine cone body. That's kind of funny. If you go to Format, see how it says like video and audio here? You can actually select audio only. So you could just export the audio alone and then use that audio, maybe work with it in like something like Audacity or GarageBand and tweak it and edit it and then bring it back into iMovie. So keep that in mind. When you are exporting things, when you go File, Share File, it doesn't have to be both. It can be just the audio alone from iMovie. All right. Let's see. Right. So those are sort of the main things that I wanted to show. I want to talk about some of the hacks that you can do with other platforms that you can bring into to iMovie. I think that would be useful to know. But before I move on to that, I just wanted to quickly just check in with folks and see if that was answering the questions. If you think this is the type of thing you would need to know how to do Fast Film Festival stuff. Are we good at this point?
Will the hacks that you're going to show, you mentioned that you can play around with it to get an additional layer of video, like there's workarounds?
Yeah. And a lot of it, sometimes with iMovie, you know how you've got, like, if you've just got 2 there, you can export it and then bring it back in and continuing to layer up. That's one way. It's just you export, then bring that like if I exported this right here and I wanted to put something else on top of this, I could export this video and then bring it back in, and it's one video at that point, which I can then put another video on top of it, if that makes sense. Yes, some of these hacks will kind of show you how to sort of layer things. Let's see. No, I'm just sharing iMovie right now. Let me see if I can see Audacity. Let me see. I want to show you guys real quickly, before we move on to anything, I'm going to show you the Free Music Archive. So this is a resource. If you're not already familiar with it, this might be something that would be useful to you if you're trying to find background music or things for your video. I use it all the time for my classes and projects, and one of the wonderful things about this tool is obviously if you're using someone else's music or artwork or creative work, you need to credit them. But there are a lot of artists who provide their work on the Free Music Archive as long as they get attribution. Additionally, there is stuff in the public domain, which you don't need to worry about copyright or, things like that if you're searching by public domain. So a lot of this stuff under Creative Commons license, you can utilize as long as, if it's with attribution or if it's, not for commercial purposes, things like that. So you can actually sort of do a search based on what you're allowed to do with it, which is nice. For the most part, to stay safe, I do a lot of stuff in the public domain, which there's less of that, but, there's plenty if you want to do attribution, Creative Commons, there's plenty of stuff. But this is a great resource. You can find all kinds of stuff, if you're interested in blues or electronic or whatever. You can click on a particular genre. They even have subgenres here, and you can sample the music by pressing the button here, the little play button, and then you can either download it or add it to your playlist. But these generally, if you download something, it downloads it as an MP3 that you can then utilize. And a lot of artists like to put their stuff up here because sometimes you can, they like to get their name out there, and you can click on that and find out more about the artist as well. But they have lots of neat, good resources on here for music. And so some of the music that I was using for some of these samples, which I know you didn't get to hear in Blue Jeans, but are in some of my exercise files, I did find on the Free Music Archive. I think it's if you're just looking for like ambient type music for the background, it's a nice resource. Let's see. Something else I just, while I'm in here, I want to mention. Safari window. It's going to let me. Okay. Hopefully it's sharing Safari right now. For those of you who are Georgia Tech affiliated, we have a gadgets department that is part of this collaboration between the Paper Museum and for the Fast Film Festival. And they have tools that may be of use. Jerusha was mentioning that there's like cameras and setups. There's tutorials for how to take the pictures sequentially for a stop motion. And so the Georgia Tech Library has a lot of these tools that you can check out, such as like iPads and things like that with the stop motion app installed. And the one that we have done tutorials on before is known as iStop Motion. And so we do have a subset of iPads that were generously donated by the Paper Museum for this purpose. And we anyway, the iPads have iStop Motion on them, and you can check them out and utilize them for this project. So that's gadgets. If you just Google gadgets in Georgia Tech Library, it's usually the first page that pops up. And so Georgia Tech folks may want to take advantage of that. Additionally, we were able to get DragonFrame installed on some of the computers at the Georgia Tech Library. If you're interested in DragonFrame, reach out to me. There's a few stations that we have set up for using that. That is a more advanced tool, which I know some of the more professional folks use, but we do have that available if there are people that are interested in using that, and I'm happy to help you set up. Let's see. Yeah, those were the main things I wanted to show. The next thing I wanted to show is the hacks, which are the using some other tools for maybe the purpose that it's not necessarily meant for, but can work with iMovie. So I am going to quickly, stop sharing real quick. I'm going to pull up Keynote. How many of you are familiar with Keynote or have heard of that before?
Keynote, like the Apple PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes, yeah,
Exactly.
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was wondering if it meant something else.
No. Yes, exactly. The Keynote with Apple. Okay, so you can, we were using iMovie to create like stop motion videos. I was kind of showing you the basics of going through iMovie. And that was one way to do a green screen. Another way to do this is you can effectively create green screen in something like Keynote. So something I don't normally use a whole lot of Keynote. I tend to use other platforms. So this was all new to me. I learned this in the last few years. I didn't realize that when you export from Keynote, one of the export options for Keynote is a movie file. So what you can do is you can create a slide with some of the Keynote animations on it. So for instance, if you wanted, say, a lens flare to come in with maybe some of your text, with iMovie, you're somewhat stuck. Some of those are templates, and you're kind of stuck with where the text is going to show up on your screen if you use some of their text screens in iMovie. But you have a little bit more control if you create it in Keynote and bring it into iMovie. So to show you kind of what was going on here, let's do my build order. These are basically just little animations. I created a slide. It's very simple. Created a slide. I used the shape tool up here to create a green background, essentially creating a green screen. And then I put this text and my pine cone on the screen and added a little bit of animation. So I'll preview it, see what it looks like. There's the lens flare coming in. And then the pine cone's going to kind of drop in. So, obviously you could, go to town with this. This is very basic. But this is known as like what is a build order. So basically you can create multiple animations, one on top of the other, to create kind of a special effect for iMovie. You can control the duration, you can control the type of animation if you want to change it. Like that was lens flare, but they have like other ones like typewriter, dissolve, comic, fireworks, a lot more than is actually available in iMovie. So you can also position it where you want it on the screen, which is really important because you'll see if you work with text very much in iMovie, you don't have a lot of control of where that text ends up landing on the video. But with this, you could. So if you create a slide, do a green background, put your text or your objects, your images, your icons, or whatever you might be using, and add some animation to it. You can then go up here to File and Export, and you can export it as a movie. So I'll just export this. I don't know where it's going to go. It'll have the resolution, self-playing. This looks good. Hit next, and it will export it as you can give it a name, and it'll export it as I think an MOV file, I believe. So it's creating a movie, and so this is sort of a nice little option for you if you want to incorporate it into iMovie. So if we jump back to iMovie, I'll show you how this works. So I've got iMovie open here, and so here's this is the little 14-second movie that I created in Keynote. So, if I wanted to use that, let's see. If I wanted to say use that for a green screen, let me see. First, let's get our final product. Move this right here. I'm going to move that over just a little bit. We can incorporate that into our movie. And it's kind of long, so I'm going to kind of clip it down. pull this here. We'll probably have to change the duration a little bit. Okay, so we've got our green screen, but we can do the same thing with this. If we click on this and then apply a green screen to it, this will now show through like this. That might be, say, the beginning of our, of our movie. And obviously we would want to make this a little bit longer now, so I'm going to delete that. We want our background a little bit longer since we've brought that kind of beginning part in. Hopefully this makes sense. Basically, I created kind of an entry or sort of an intro for the video by utilizing Keynote to create another green screen background so that I could have a custom intro to this video. And obviously, this is nothing fancy. But you could, if you wanted to, you could work on your graphics or animations and make something a little bit fancier. But and then my timing's a little off on this, so I need to. I've been kind of doing this very roughly, so bear with me. I'm going to bring in the original one. Yeah, let's bring this in. And we'll out. Getting a little bit longer. About right. We'll have to apply the green screen again there. And I'm sort of rushing through this, I apologize. But if you ever, also if you have multiple clips like this, you can do things like drag, if once this is if you're sort of working with it, you can put transitions in between and things like that. I'm going to take this one out just because I know you guys can't hear that, so I'm going to take that out. So that's kind of like a Keynote hack that you can do, is you can basically create little short green screen videos by using Keynote. So that might be something that is so that you can incorporate multiple green screens into one video. And keep in mind, if you're trying to continually layer things, as I was mentioning before, in some cases, what you'll want to do is you will want to go up here, like if you're happy with the way this looks. It may require a few iterations. You may end up having to go to File, Share, File, and you export it as a video file and then bring it back in, and then you're able to layer something else on top of it. Unfortunately, with it being iMovie, you are somewhat limited, and if you want to get super fancy with layering, I would recommend stepping up to something else. But if your layering is going to be minimal, you can definitely pull it off with iMovie. But just to keep in mind that you can use easy tools like Keynote to create little effects that actually don't look too bad, that are better than some of the stock text that is available with iMovie. But I'll pause right here just to see if there's any questions about that Keynote hack or anything related to that. Well, I want to be respectful of people's time, and hopefully that's given you a little bit of an introduction to using iMovie to create some of these stop motion videos. Is there anything key that I've left out, Jerusha, that you can think of that I could recap really quickly before we close?
No, not that I can think of. I did want to just highlight our next presenter for next week. If you don't mind me sharing my screen really quickly, and then I'll let everybody.
Stop sharing. 1 second. Let me see. Where's my share thing? Okay, hold on a second.
Like I said, ASIFA South is one of our partners on this. ASIFA is an international animation society. and the local branch here will be hosting the final talk for our film fest. And they also offer a lot of great resources on their Facebook group as well. Advancing. Okay. I mentioned earlier Paper Animation Film Fest, the YouTube channel. We've got a lot of wonderful playlists, and you can see some of the animations created in workshops, as well as inspirational videos and tutorials. Next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we'll be talking with Vinod Krishnan, who is a technical director for Disney and Disney Plus, and he'll be talking about his career in animation and taking questions if you guys want to join us for that. It should be a great talk. And he'll be in conversation with oh my goodness, I'm blinking right now. Ginger Tantavitong, who's the president of ASIFA South. And then hopefully this has inspired you all to make your own videos for submission for Fast Film Fest. The submission date is February 18th, and then we'll do a watch party screening virtually on Friday, March 4th from 8 to 9 Eastern Standard Time. Once again, thank you all. If you enjoyed this free programming and would like to support with a donation, I put a link in the chat for the Robert C. Williams Museum of Papermaking. And thank you, Alison, for a very informative presentation. I always get excited and filled with ideas when I see you present.
Oh, good. Thank you, Jerusha. Yeah, and I just want to say, I'm not sure if my email was shared earlier, but please feel free to email me if any of you are working on projects for the Fast Film Festival. I'm happy to assist if you have an idea and you want to try to figure out, brainstorm how to do it. I'm happy to try and chime in. But I've enjoyed being here. The Fast Film Festival is always so much fun.
Thank you. And again, you guys will find that in the chat there. All right. I think that's our evening.
Thank you, everyone.